On this episode of Movie Bytes, we take a look at the 1955 canine classic, Lady and the Tramp. Hello, and welcome to Movie Bytes, the podcast where three friends are watching every animated Disney movie in chronological order. We will share some facts about the movie and our history with the movie. And after that, we'll have a very free-form discussion about this movie. Today, I am joined for the first time ever on video by my loyal co-hosts, Jeffrey Perez and David Jones. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. It's kind of weird being on video for this, but I like it.
I want you all to see my face. This is what I look like when I wake up in the morning.
David has glowing eyes all the time, so that's cool. Hopefully we don't pick our noses, because normally we're just used to audio-only versions of recording. So, I don't know. I figured having these on YouTube, I don't know how many people actually listen to podcasts on YouTube, but I figured it's another way to get these out there, kind of have a fun visual thing with backgrounds and all that good stuff. We are kind of entering the era here in 2020 of the video chat, the webcam era, I guess, even though this stuff's been around forever, but now everybody's using it. But we've been on Skype. We're OG Skype users. We've been making podcasts on Skype since, I don't know, what year did you guys start doing podcasts on Skype?
2016 for me. I think 2015, unless Dave was doing it before.
No,
right.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't using
friends.
video, but yeah, I started doing it 2015, I think.
Yeah, it was like September-ish, 2015.
Was it? Or was it? Sure was that, or was it early 2014? I don't remember.
It was after Rare Replay. I mean, if we're talking about the logcast, that was after Rare Replay.
Was it? I thought it was before. Okay, my bad.
This is all good stuff.
Yeah.
Are
So we're
eating
talking
it up.
about something that probably doesn't interest any of the audience at all. So
There might be some overlap.
I was on this super niche podcast that like no one listened to about a single video game developer. You know.
That was awesome. I don't care.
Yeah.
Those were the days.
Yeah, well, all three of us were on that. That's how we all know each other.
We were. We go way back. And then if you didn't know, me and Jeff started a Disney video game podcast called Mouse Bytes. And then we kind of fizzled out from that, got a little burnt out, and so now we're doing Movie Bytes, where we get to watch movies instead of trying to play through ridiculously difficult video games. So
Yeah, we actually did something
there's our
mildly
history.
mainstream. Aren't you proud of us?
And now we're on video.
Now we're on video for the whole world to see.
Yeah. Today's video we are reviewing is Lady and the Tramp. Came out in 1955. It's going to be a good one. I'm excited to get into it. So to start us off, I'm going to have my buddy Jeff here. He's going to give us some facts and tidbits, some information, some datas, some numbers about Lady and the Tramp. So Jeff, take it away.
Alrighty. So as Clay mentioned, it came out in 1955. Lady and the Tramp, the animated version, that is. It was directed by Clyde, Geronimi, Wilfred Jackson, and Hamilton Lusk. Produced by Walt Disney. Had four story writers: Erdman Penner, Joe Rinaldi, Ralph Wright, and Don DeGrady. Based on a book by Ward Green called Happy Dan the Cynical Dog. Just learned that. Starring various voice talents of the time, including singer Peggy Lee, who was pretty well known, and Barbara Luddy and Larry Roberts as the leads, I believe. The music was done by Oliver Wallace, and
I think this was his last movie, actually. Oliver Wallace.
Oh, I didn't know.
I don't know if he died or if he just stopped making them.
Retired. Okay.
Yeah. But
Interesting. It was released on June 22nd of 1955, which means it was basically a month before Disneyland opened, which I just found to be interesting. The runtime is 76 minutes, which is pretty good, pretty average for a feature-length film of the animated variety. The budget was $4 million, and the current box office is $187 million, though I don't have the data on what it took in its initial run. One interesting tidbit, and I don't know if we'll elaborate on this later or not, but is that it was the first animated motion picture done in CinemaScope, which is ultra wide, like 2.35 to 1 ratio. So that's pretty cool.
Yes.
And they use it very well, in my opinion. We'll maybe discuss that as we go through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had jotted it down to be discussed. But yeah, a couple things I wanted to hit on. We got to figure out a better box office thing, because I was watching a review on this yesterday, this movie, and somebody mentioned how much it made in its initial run. So that information's out there. I think we just got to start looking for it. Wikipedia doesn't really provide it, but I think that'd be a little more interesting than a movie that, comes back to the theater 4 or 5 times in its life.
Yeah, in the Wikipedia article, I just scrolled down. It does say that there's an estimated 6.5 million take in its initial
okay.
run.
I feel like the box office gets easier to track once you get past getting more into the 70s. I feel like these older films, they didn't track this information nearly as well, so it's not as easily attainable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like I said, they just kept putting this thing back out in the theater, and I think they keep adding to that on that number that Jeff was reading. So it's a little different. Not a lot of movies get brought back 4 or 5 times to the theaters throughout their time.
Right.
But and then as far as, what was her name, Peggy Lee? Is that
the
it?
singer.
Yeah, she. I was reading up on her, and it sounds like a lot of people think that she was kind of one of the first. Where they like pulled a really big name and kind of did the whole celebrity voice actor kind of thing. And I think she wrote a lot of the music for this movie, as well as did voicing for it. And so, there's a lot of interesting stuff with her. I think she ended up suing Disney when they put it out on VHS, because she technically owned the rights to, I think that the wording was maybe transcripts of the music, and she considered VHS to be a transcript of that, and so she ended up winning and made some millions of dollars. So
the year before she died.
Oh, was it? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So hey, I mean, leave something to your kids, I guess. I'm sure she was already rich because she was well known and all that stuff, but hey, do what you gotta do, right?
Oh, nope. It was, 10 years before she died. She had a little bit of time to enjoy
All
it.
right.
My bad.
That's better.
I can math.
1 + 9.
I actually just misread 2002 as 92 because I'm dumb.
All right. Fair enough. I prefer to see 92 than 2002.
But that's also crazy that she lived till 2002, because you just think of her as this old lady this old singer that we would have never had in our lifetime. But for us, that's half our life for the three of us.
Dude, I know, right?
It's pretty crazy.
And I was looking at different voice actors from this movie on IMDb, and a lot of them made it like into the 2000s, which I thought was pretty crazy. But anywho, let's move on to our history with this movie. We'll start off with David, then Jeff can go, and then I'll go, and then we'll get into our in-depth movie discussion. David, take it away.
All right. So I believe this is one of the Disney films I did not watch as a kid.
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm not sure when I first watched this movie. My guess is probably sometime in my 20s when I started to get more interested in, seeing the ones that I had missed as a kid. So I might, I feel like I'd seen, the really famous scenes on probably, the Disney Channel and whatnot. I'd seen the spaghetti scene and whatnot. And I had familiarity with the concept and characters, but I believe the time that I first watched this was probably early to mid 20s. Definitely had different appreciations for different things watching it at that age. But yeah, that's kind of really my history with it. Even it's never really been one of my favorites, so I think I only watched it a couple times as an adult. And we watched it again this weekend.
Interesting. I'm very interested to kind of talk through this with you and kind of hear your perspective, having only seen it as an adult. For me, I watched it a lot as a kid. It was in our regular rotation. Really enjoyed it. I don't have any significant moments or stories with it. It was just one that we watched a lot. I know that we liked it enough, and so like the first time I went to Disney World, I was 12, and I had a 2-year-old sister, and we bought her a lady like stuffed dog that was probably like 2 feet tall. It's pretty cool. But it was like that was how significant it was to our family that we all loved it, and even our 2-year-old little sister loved it. So there's a little bit of history there, but yeah, it's kind of one of my Disney life movies.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I grew up with this. I remember watching this when I was a kid. Had the VHS. Remember, the songs even better thanks to those classic VHS sing-alongs, and so very familiar with them for that reason. Wasn't my favorite movie of the era, and so I don't think I watched it as much as some of the other ones from the era, but definitely very familiar with it. There were a few parts that I kind of didn't remember, or maybe hadn't really seen since I became an adult or whatever, and we'll talk through some of those things. But it's probably been a while since I've seen it. I watched the live action remake they put out on Disney Plus when they launched the service, and so that kind of brought back some of the memories of the original, obviously. So yeah, pretty familiar with it, know it pretty well, the source material and stuff to it. So pretty, but I wasn't bored, I guess, watching through it. So it wasn't like I felt like I'd burnt myself out on it. So that's basically it. Nothing super interesting. Just I know it, I like it, and grew up with it. So
cool.
All right, so we'll go ahead and jump in, spend most of our time here. Basically now we've changed up our formula for the show. Instead of going kind of scene by scene, we are doing more of a free-form discussion where we all sit down and watch the movie a couple days before, and then we come together, we take notes, be it mentally or on paper or typed out, and we just kind of hit through it. So it might be jump around a little bit, it might get a little random. I try to kind of take notes in chronological order. I know Jeff does, and so we'll just kind of we'll discuss things, we'll talk it through, and then we'll call it a day. So let me go ahead and hit play on the movie here, and we will get started. All right, so to start us off, Lady and the Tramp starts off with a snowy Christmas town intro, which I noted as being really beautiful and well done. Sets the scene very nicely, kind of puts you at a certain time frame. In fact, we find out later that it kind of ends at the same time of the year with the Christmas thing. Not a Christmas movie, but starts out with the Christmas thing.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the first thing that's noticeably different? You know what I'm talking about? Than any other Disney movie prior to this?
No opening book shot?
Nope, it's the first one animated and displayed in not in 4:3 aspect ratio. So this is the first, I can't remember the exact ratio, the first that's filmed in more of a traditional cinematic aspect ratio.
Yeah.
You mean that thing that Jeff was talking about earlier when we were going through facts and info about the movie?
Yeah, sorry, I spaced out. It's early.
Yes, yeah, sure.
Yeah, it is.
We can talk about that. I didn't realize that was a thing, and I watched this in 4:3 because I put my VHS on, not realizing what I was missing out on. So
right, yeah, this is definitely one of the ones you don't want to watch on VHS.
Did you at least kind of go back and skim through it in widescreen, because it's incredible?
I did look up online just to kind of see a comparison between the two, and saw what I was missing out on. Kind of regretted not having it on Disney Plus, which is funny because last episode on Peter Pan, I was too lazy to set up my VHS stuff, so I just just
Disney
sat
Plus
down
that one.
and Disney Plused it, and then I
Yeah.
finally was like, all right, I need to get my, because I have an old JC Penney RGB monitor that I found,
Right.
and I play it on there, and then I also play it on my big screen at the same time, so I can kind of compare, because I'm a nerd in that way, I guess. Yeah, but then I got done with it and come to find out that that's not really the true aspect ratio. But that being said, there is this tidbit that I found out. They had actually animated a good chunk of the movie in the original aspect ratio 4:3, and then Walt Disney got wind of this thing called CinemaScope and was like, I want to do that, I want that. And the guys were like, but we've already done half of this. And he was like, well, just add it on. And so they literally had to go back and they had to like add more on the sides to it. Yeah.
Damn.
So
So
that
they
was
didn't
kinda
just
how it-
they didn't just rephotograph it.
Yeah, I was
Dang.
wondering if they rephotographed it, but because
Well-
like all the cells would have still been there unless they'd washed them already.
Mhm.
Oh, I don't know if they rephotographed it or if they just added it somehow digital. I don't know.
Well,
But all
not
I know
digital,
It
is-
wouldn't have been digitally.
Well, not
in
digital,
1950s.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know what I really don't know how they could have done that without it looking super obvious.
I wonder if they hadn't actually like taken like the photos, but they had
they had just animated the frame.
right, and so they were
Yeah.
able to just add to the frames and then go in.
Yeah.
And, so I'm not exactly sure where in the process they were with it, but it sounds like they had
Crazy,
to, still change a lot
Yeah.
to make it happen.
Because I imagine probably a good deal of the shots, though, just because the matte paintings for the background would have been bigger than 4:3.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of cases they might have just had to reframe the shot to include more of the background, which
Hopefully
you know,
that's what it was, because
Yeah.
Right. And another reason I noticed it before I had watched the video that was talking about it was I was looking up background shots for our video here, and all of the background shots were like in these like, you know, weird ratios where they were longer and skinnier, and I was like, that's kind of strange. And then when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's probably why. That makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah.
So is CinemaScope something they continue to use then on out moving forward, or did they go
sort of? They did it on
back?
Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah,
but
Sleeping
then
Beauty.
I don't know that they returned to it after that. I don't know if they went back to 4:3 or if they stayed in like kind of the more.
they
common-
went to 4:3 for I think the Jungle Book, Sword in the Stone, and some of those other ones
Yeah.
are. I believe they go back to CinemaScope. Maybe with the Black Cauldron, maybe with the Fox and the Hound. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think Fox and the Hound is.
Okay, so like that.
Maybe
wouldn't-
Great
at that
Mouse
point, that
Detective. I
wouldn't
can't
have even
remember.
been
Yeah, some of the later
CinemaScope,
sort of
though.
Bronze Age films start to go
Mhm.
back to CinemaScope, but they released a
Well,
few back in 4:3 after Sleeping
widescreen.
Beauty. Yeah.
Right.
If we're being technical, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
CinemaScope I think only existed until like 67 or so, and then it was kind of then
Right.
Right.
became
Yeah,
sort
they
of
go
standard, and
to
then they just used widescreen. Yeah.
right. So there's two other outside of CinemaScope. There's two other aspect ratios that are used for film now, and they used one of those. I can't remember the exact ratio. It's like
The one
244 something, right?
The one now is 2.35 to 1. This I think is 2.66 to 1.
Yeah, 2.35. And then there's another one that sometimes gets used as like 1.8 something, I think. It's-
1.37
I don't know if it was ever
says
used
the
in a Disney
Academy.
movie. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Poor Clay.
Yeah,
Poor
but the one that
listeners.
Avengers is shot in, but none of the other
Snoring like-
MCU movies are, and it annoys me.
That's crazy. I never knew that. But
Yeah.
Clay was snoring like Jim Deere in the opening scene when
Yes.
he comes upstairs.
Jim Deere,
Um,
right, yes.
Real quick before we kind of jump more into it, I think we usually kind of talk about the backgrounds behind the opening titles, and just quickly, these ones, because they're often painterly and stuff, these ones are more like pencil sketches, and I found that to be cool, especially in the widescreen. Don't know if you guys noticed that, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Pencil
Mm.
sketch. I dig it.
But no, like right off the bat with the widescreen and like you said, that opening Christmas Town, like it is gorgeous. Like the backgrounds in this movie are just beautifully
Right.
done.
Yeah, I would argue that from an artistic standpoint, Lady and the Tramp and Sleeping Beauty are kind of the crown jewels of Disney animation because they're they use the CinemaScope, and there's the only two that are like the last two to be hand inked.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like these two from an artistic framing and animation standpoint, I feel like it's hard to really like top what they did because it was so hard to do.
Not the last to be hand inked, but to be hand copied to the cells rather than Xeroxed. Because they were hand inked up till Little Mermaid.
Okay.
But yes, they're
but
utterly
yeah,
gorgeous.
but the Xerox would be like instead of using the hand inking, right? Because they didn't have
no. So they would Xerox the pencil to the cells, and then they would still hand paint the colors, the ink.
Oh, the colors, yeah, but not the outlines.
Inking is. Oh yeah, I guess it is ink and paint. You're right. Never mind.
Yeah. So yeah, the inking. It was still hand painted, but not hand inked anymore. Yeah.
That's okay. You guys know more about that stuff than I do, so I'm kind of deer in headlights.
You need to watch The Reluctant Dragon, sir.
Yeah, I do.
I've started in on all this.
I know. I've started like 3 times, and then I always like fizzle out. But I just need. Now that we've been doing this show, I've wanted to do that, and I need to. So
yeah,
I will do so.
Cover it on here. I don't know. It's not one of the major ones, but it's a very interesting one.
Maybe we could do a bonus episode.
Ooh,
and you,
bonus.
I can just hit record and then walk away, and you, David, can nerd about frames per
Let's
second.
talk about inking. Let's talk about caps in The Little Mermaid and what scene it was used.
All right.
Yeah, so this movie, they kind of show the faces of Jim, Deer, and Darlene, but they don't really. They kind of like avoid it.
Point. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that thing with like Charlie Brown where you don't see adults' faces or
the Muppet Babies with Nanny. Yeah.
Yes. It's kind of like that, but like they don't like keep it a mystery. Like you can see their faces. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons as to why they did this, but what do you guys think is their reason for doing this?
I mean, my guess is it's twofold. One, to keep the focus on the dog. But 2, obviously, is just humans are pretty hard to do well, and it's a lot cheaper and less research intensive to just kind of do the form rather than the facial animations and expressions.
Do you agree with him, David?
Yeah, those are the 2 things I would have said too. So,
yeah. See, I feel like they can animate humans like no problem. I mean, they just did Peter Pan where there's like a dozen pirates dancing around and singing at the same time. Like, I feel like they've got the human part down. So, I don't know if it's that, but
it's definitely the first one because it's they want to be they don't want they want it to be the dog's world, and if they focus on the humans too much, it stops becoming the dog's world that they're focusing on.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, I feel like dogs look at our faces, but they probably also see a lot of our knees and feet. So, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, even if they're good at humans, it's still time consuming to do. I mean, you see like kind of clips of the animators like looking in mirrors and making faces. Like,
it takes time.
It takes time, and it is a lot. People are a lot more forgiving on facial expressions of, say, like these dogs have human-esque faces with the eye expression and all that. But like, you're gonna forgive an inaccuracy more on a dog than you are a person, so you don't have to pour as much time into that research per se. I mean, I don't know for sure, but it seems plausible.
Yeah, I agree.
One cool thing in kind of the earlier scene when Lady's an adult for the first time. I guess she's only like 6 months old here, which is interesting. But she chases a rat out of the yard, and it's kind of a foreshadow, spoiler alert, but I mean, we're talking about it. So she chases a rat out of the yard, and I thought that was kind of cool to show it off towards the beginning to kind of frame the movie. As you said, it opens and closes with Christmas, and then it opens and closes with a rat, kind of bookended by Christmas. So I thought that was kind of good writing.
Yeah. It's foreboding.
A foreboding.
I really appreciated the let's let the puppy sleep upstairs on our bed for one night, and then it cuts to 6 months later and still on the bed. I'm like, dang, that's so accurate.
Yeah, super relatable.
Anybody who owns a dog knows how that works. Like, all right, just this once, and then the dog is like, nope, every time.
I live here now.
One thing I found interesting also in this scene is when she brings in the newspaper and rips the hole through the headline, And Jim Deere makes a comment. He's like, ever since we got this dog, we don't have to read any of those terrible world headlines. And it just felt very 2020.
Yeah.
Relatable.
Like, how bad could their life have been back then? Like, come on. It seemed pretty.
They were a bunch of like two wealthy white people in a witch house. They were probably upset about the civil rights movement. It's like, I'm sick of hearing about this Martin Luther King guy. Or actually, no, he wouldn't have been there yet. But you know what I mean.
This is like turn of the century, yeah.
Turn of the century, but yeah.
Can't believe women want to vote. No.
Yeah, that's probably what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I am curious what Jim Deere does. Jim. Because obviously they're very wealthy, so.
Yeah, and that was something I literally, my next point here was that the set design inside of that house is freaking nuts. Like, their whole house is like intricately decorated and designed, and
there's like a stained glass window on the landing of their stairs.
Right.
God.
And it's not like they just have like a chair and a piece of furniture in the corner. There's like stuff on it, and I think it was not necessarily just to prove that they're rich, but I think it's just more like Disney trying to come up with these like intricate set designs that are really fun to look at and stuff. And so I think in that process, this couple ends up becoming kind of well off, I would say. But interesting.
Definitely, yeah.
Who gives their dog hot coffee and a donut?
Dude, yeah, I had to comment on that as well.
Yeah, that doesn't seem that very good.
They didn't know any better. They were still thinking that tobacco was a healthy option.
Here's some scalding hot coffee, dog.
Yeah.
There you go. If you need any whiskey later, I'll pour some in your bowl.
Right. Surprised I didn't do shots with her.
Right. Teach lady to smoke.
Here, lady, just breathe.
The 50s.
I noted about Jacques and Trusty, who are two supporting characters. I just thought how well crafted and clever these two are. You instantly feel like you're good friends with them. I think they did a great job of choosing breeds and then creating personalities around those breeds, even with the accents and stuff. But creating these personalities where, the old dog has a southern accent and is a little bit slower, but then the little Scottish guy, he's like high strung and he jumps around and gets all feisty and stuff. And I don't know, I honestly like them more than like maybe the two title characters here. But I don't know. I just think they did a great job coming up with characters, gave them a little bit of a backstory. They even have their own little character arc with this whole like losing your sense of smell thing and all that. And,
right. They have a history. Yeah.
Right. They go back and I don't know. I just really like them. I think they were like some of the best parts of this movie for me. Is I just enjoyed them, and I wish they could have been in it a little bit more maybe, but I think they were in it for the amount of time you would expect from a supporting character kind of thing. So
yeah, I love like when we kind of meet Jacques. He's got that bone that he's adding to his collection, and he gets super possessive about it and trying to play it off. And the animation of him trying to bury it while he's sitting on it, I thought was just brilliant. So
super well done.
Super awesome.
Yeah, I like that.
I do kind of moving past that, the introduction of the Tramp. I liked that they showed him, and they do talk about it later specifically, but that he's literally from the other side of the train tracks. And that's kind of an underlying thing here is, literally the divide of the nice rich neighborhood and the poor kind of crappy side of town on the other side of the tracks. I thought that, the interesting commentary and metaphor and all that.
Yeah. I guess I didn't think about the train tracks kind of being the divide, but that makes sense. I wonder if there's historical accuracy to that. I wonder if there was, if for some reason maybe train tracks did.
It seems like a stereotype, right? Like that's a very common trope.
Right.
The rough guy from the other side of the tracks. You can see it in I feel like lots of movies and books and stuff. But
yeah,
who knows? I mean, economically, one side of town there's always, quote unquote, the nice neighborhood and the not nice neighborhood, and for some reason it happened to be divided by the train tracks, or maybe the train tracks were the rougher side because that's where the blue collar workers were. I don't know.
Right. It's probably something like that. I noted Lady knows her owners as Jim Deere and Darling, which aren't actually, probably their real names, but just kind of how they refer to each other. But I thought it was a clever way of helping us kind of see things from the dog point of view. We talked about, not focusing on the faces, and so she kind of refers to them as that because that's what she hears them call each other. Right. But not really something I picked up on as a child, I think. I think I just assumed his name was Jim Deere and her name was Darling. But then when I think get a little bit older, you kind of pick up on that, maybe not as much as a kid's. I don't know. I thought it's a clever thing, and it's interesting. So
yeah. I like that we see Tramp setting 2 dogs free from the dog catcher when the dog catcher is introduced, and that those characters come back later and are in the pound. It helps show the passage of time, I think, a little bit. And something I didn't really gather when I watched this as a kid was that this movie spans 2 years. I think as a kid, you kind of just put it into a box that it's like, oh, this is, over the course of a week or 2 or whatever.
Right.
But like, they get the dog, she grows up 6 months, and then the lady gets pregnant, has the baby, and then more time passes, and, it ends with 2 Christmases after the first one, so it's literally 2 years.
Yep.
I wish they would have addressed a little more how frequently the Tramp visited, because he wanders, escaping the dog catcher, he wanders into her neighborhood and then just sort of like inserts himself into the conversation that she's having with Jacques and Trusty. And that's their meeting, but then it's like they don't show them interacting again for like a year till the baby's born or whatever, when she runs away with Aunt Sarah.
Right.
So like, does he visit frequently? Do they build a friendship, or is that they met this one time, he went back to his side of the tracks, and then they ran into each other again when she ran from the pet store, and then ends up meeting him again? Wish they would have elaborated on that a little bit.
Yeah. How do you feel about the kind of pacing to the front of this movie? The one thing I was kind of aware of is I actually paused it when Lady ran after she got the muzzle. Because to me, that's when I feel like the most memorable parts of the movie start, is after, that was about 36 minutes in.
Yeah.
So I felt that the front half of the movie was very too front heavy. Like, it was a lot of just dog interacting with owners, dog interacting with other dogs, dog interacting, or lady interacting with like the baby and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which to me wasn't the most interesting part of the film.
I noted that I liked the pacing, that it kind of,
did you?
Just kind of, it kept moving. It didn't, no one scene ended up dragging.
Really?
They may have done too much setup in this part, trying to establish what her daily life is like, that she's well off and she's got these friends, and she's the center of, it's very much like Toy Story, but probably just more elongated, where she's the center of these humans' world, and then all of a sudden she's not. And so Buzz Lightyear, metaphor being the baby. I found it interesting. I thought it was a cool setup, because you're seeing her life and how, it's just perfect, and then all of a sudden she's just that dog, and it really offends her and affects her. And I liked how it was set up. I thought it was good, but yeah, I can see that it definitely could be seen as too much setup. So
okay,
I don't know.
David, let me read what I wrote. David, I have a note here. At the moment with the muzzle running away, it isn't until Lady runs away from being muzzled that I feel like this movie starts to finally find a decent pace. Tramp fighting the wild dogs and going to see the beaver are very much needed. The front half of the movie is a bit slow. So I agree with you, David.
Okay.
I get where you're coming from, Jeff. I agree. It is, some of it is necessary setup, in establishing some of these characters and all that stuff, and that's fine. But yeah, I definitely agree that I felt like it was a little slow on the front end, and then it just gets a lot more interesting. And maybe that's it, because it's such a bump up in energy, where all of a sudden she's being chased and Tramp's fighting these wild dogs, and it's just like, whoa, like, this could have been a lot more intense the whole time, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think the reason, for me anyway, that Toy Story succeeds by doing similar things is I find the characters to be a lot more interesting and relatable in Toy Story.
Yeah.
Where
The front end of Toy
Lady, to
Story moves a
me,
lot
isn't
quicker, too.
particularly an amazing protagonist.
I'm just
But
thinking about it right now. Like, this movie really is just the same as Toy Story. It's like, I mean, other than the romanticism part, but it's like,
Don't
Lady-
Woody and Buzz fall in love though?
yeah, well,
yeah, there's that scene where Woody and Buzz eat spaghetti and end up making out.
Mrs.
So that's what
Nesbit.
it's-
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
No, but it's they end up away from home and are trying to get back home. It deviates a lot, but it does have similarity.
No, yeah, I can see it actually. That's.
Yeah.
I think this isn't the first episode where you've like
Probably not.
drawn parallels between other movies. It's funny. Seems like
There's only 7 stories in history. They say, literally, like that's the thing. And did you guys say that in English? There's 7
Right.
basic stories.
Mhm.
David wasn't paying attention during that one. He had zoned
Probably.
out. CinemaScope.
Coffee hasn't kicked in.
I made a note that Disney Animation did a great job studying the way dogs move and animating them in such a way. I think if it wasn't very clear to the viewer, when you get to the point where we're first introduced to Tramp and he does that shot where he stands up and stretches is so spot on for anyone who anyone who's around a dog or has a dog. When you see that, you're like, yep, that's pretty much exactly how it is.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you guys know similar
Totally.
dog mannerisms, but I thought they did a great job.
I mean, just starting with the puppy, I noted it with the puppy at the very, very first scene, like the way she runs across the floor and is like slipping and plows into the door, but then it doesn't move and she's confused, and just the way she, cocks her head and all that, like it's just brilliant. And then the same thing with the Tramp, like when he stretches and then as he gets the water and then walks under the water drip and shakes and all that. I mean, it's just, I didn't ever feel like they dropped the ball on that. Like every reaction just seemed like a real dog reaction. It's pretty incredible, really.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that every movie needs a villain, but this one doesn't really have a clear villain. Is it the dog catcher? Is it the baby? Is it the rat? I don't know.
I mean,
there isn't really. There isn't really a clear. Like, there's obviously threats to being a dog. Like, the villain is really just all external threats to dog. It's not really like one defined. Could be a dog catcher. Could be losing attention. Could be a rat. I guess maybe problem back then more so. I've never had a rat in my house.
I was thinking of that too, and it's kind of like the one that came to mind is like Moana. There's bad characters, but she kind of just moves through them. There's not like a central villain. And it's a dog versus nature, dog versus environment, where the villain is her overcoming the unknown, overcoming fear, maybe just being out of her comfort zone, and that's where the conflict is her adjusting to change. Toy Story has Sid, so it has a villain, but like in general it's Woody. The villain is really more Woody being displaced and him fighting himself and learning to deal with change. So you might say that it's
Can you stop talking about Toy Story?
well, that's because it's the similarities, but okay.
I'm just kidding.
Jeff loves Toy Story.
Speaking of Toy Story,
Back when they made Toy Story, it was based on the... No, I don't know.
Jeff is like a connoisseur of Toy Story and just bringing that into discussion. This reminds me of Toy Story.
I'm going to try and slip it into the rest of our episodes. Watch me.
Speaking of like great animated shots with dogs, there's a shot where Trusty starts scratching his neck and all of his skin folds over his face.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that's like one of the best animated shots ever for like 2D animation.
Pretty
It's
spectacular.
so good. It probably took somebody so long to animate that, and they just freaking knocked it out. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, as an animator, how do you even create the reference footage for that, or do you? Like, that's just brilliant.
Right. And there's so many little folds of skin. I'm sure those dogs, when they do stuff like that, you kind of get that effect, but probably not to that
Lightly.
degree.
Right. Yeah.
And so they embellished it and it made for a kind of funny moment, and it's just
Totally.
fun to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next thing I had after that was when Darling sends Jim Deere out at 3 a.m. to get watermelon and chop suey. Watching this as an adult versus watching it as a kid, those types of moments are hilarious. And even though like I don't have kids, like it's super, my friends are just seeing popular culture. It's super relatable and hilarious and still relevant.
Yeah.
But also like in whatever this is, I mean, it looks like turn of the century, like 1910 or something. Where the heck would he go at 3 a.m. to get those things? It's April, so like watermelon's not really in season, for one. And two, it's not like there's a Walmart, like a 24-hour Walmart. Like there's a general store downtown, and that, the owner is probably your next door neighbor, So,
he goes downtown with a brick and just drops a window and steals it.
Goes into the back alley, steals it out of the crate. Yeah.
He's like, my wife is pregnant. Don't you mess with me.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because actually my next point was about the chop suey reference, which I thought was a bit peculiar. And I was like, did they even have chop suey back whenever this is? And so I looked it up, and apparently chop suey was a dish that was created in America. It is not a like native Chinese dish. Okay. And it's not fully like clear when it was made, but it was around the turn of the century actually that it became a thing. It was something that Americans would order but eat, but like native Chinese ethnic Asian people typically would not eat this. It was more of an American thing, so it's totally plausible. They threw it in. I imagine they knew when they chose that. I'm sure they wanted to pick something super random, and so they're like, Chinese food.
That's random.
But even still, like, how many places do you think had served Chinese food at the turn of the century? It was probably very, scarce. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting. I'm sure they were just trying to come up with something really random to go with watermelon, and so that was what they picked. But
maybe he wasn't picking up food. Maybe he was picking up a System of a Down record.
Yo,
I
don't think you trust in okay.
He just went out to his car and turned that on and just
here you go. Here's some chop suey. Ladies all headbanging.
Maybe that's how Darling woke him up at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Wake up! Go get me some
makeup. You want to?
Yeah.
So quarter way through the movie, lady starts singing inside her head about the baby. I didn't really like that part. It kind of seemed out of place because up to this point there really wasn't much singing. I think after this the mom sings that Lulu song or whatever, but it was just like out of nowhere, all of a sudden she's like singing in her head, and it's very reverby, and it was just like a really kind of not a very catchy melody, and it was like, and I think it was intentionally kind of this uncertainty, like, what is this thing? But I don't know. It was like, oh, apparently we're singing now, and I think this is the only part of the movie where lady sings anything, and so it was just like, it felt like an unfleshed out music number, and I didn't really. I don't know. I feel like she could have just thought those things and recorded it talking. Like, why did it need to be sung when she doesn't sing anything else in the rest of the movie? I just thought it was weird.
All the music in the movie sort of feels out of place. Bella Notte kind of works, but like He's a Tramp doesn't really work. It's just like, what? Suddenly there's a musical exposition. The Siamese Cat song like just feels really out of place because, like you said, it's not a musical. Right. They don't start with a musical. There's no "I want" song, quote unquote. So like, it's really weird to just throw in and very limited musical numbers. The movie doesn't really have. I guess it does have a. There's a. What's the term for like characters having their own score? Leitmotif. Lady sort of has one that's like do 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 do. But other than that, like there's not a significant score. It's very much pushed to the back, in my opinion. So the music in this movie is kind of odd. It's sort of like at odds with itself.
Right. I don't know, David. Do you think this movie is a musical or not?
No, not really. I don't really think I particularly even like care for most of the music in it. He said it's out of place and it's not even like particularly memorable.
Right.
The Siamese cat song is probably the most memorable one just because of it being borderline racist. But like other than that, like I can't really. I just watched this yesterday, and I remembered like the baby song in Lady's Head, but I don't remember the tune or any of the words. It was just kind of there. So yeah.
Yeah, to me, Bella Notte is kind of the more notable one, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm all caught up to the Siamese cat song. Jeff, did you have anything before then?
Real quick, the Jim Deere and Darling leaving like the month they have the freaking baby. Like, who does that? Like, what the heck?
Right? They needed a break, man.
Yeah,
they're super rich.
Too intense.
They have to go to their island.
God, that really, again, as a kid, you don't really think about it, but like as an adult, like, who does this? Like, and I mean, this is before formula and stuff. So what? The Aunt Sarah just giving the baby just cow milk? Like, what is happening?
Moo.
Yep, she's breastfeeding.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Maybe
someone had to do it so the Jim Deere and Darling could go have their cocaine binge on a private island.
Yes. Yeah.
That's close. I don't. Was there cocaine at the turn of the century? I don't know.
Probably. Or
opium.
We could go opium.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I wonder if maybe that was more common back then.
Yeah, was that like what you did?
Because like back then they used to have like nurseries with, Mary Poppins watching your kids, and then
right.
You would,
this is a rich family. You would think they just have a nanny, right?
Right. So maybe they were in the process, and maybe just back then it wasn't like, right. Maybe it wasn't as common practice to like.
Mm-hmm.
Nurture a baby. It was just like, oh, when they get older, then we'll like invest in the kid, and then so at that point they're like, we did our job, let's go do our thing, and when the baby's older, we'll I don't know.
It's okay.
It is kind of weird.
They gave the baby the key to the latch. It's fine. The latchkey baby.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I noticed is that the baby was like delivered in the house, which is probably more common back then, but still crazy. Like,
the doctors made house calls.
Hopefully that doctor used proper hygiene. Washed his hands.
Jeff, I'm pretty sure they did back then.
Oh man.
They also did some weird practices back then. So
probably put leeches on her and
I was literally just gonna make a leech reference. Thank you, Jeff.
But anyway, Siamese cat. Oh
no, did you also notice the baby had like way too much detail drawn on it?
It's just like a painting.
It was more of a background painting than an animated character, so it was like super detailed especially compared to Jim Deere and Darling, who are very flat painted. Yeah. Totally don't.
I know. I get the feeling that like, I mean, maybe, in the original film it was less noticeable, but it just felt like Lady was like looking at a picture. Like they had a piece of cardboard.
You've birthed a painting.
Oh. It's not a stillborn, it's a still life. Okay, bad joke.
All right, no. Siamese cats. Let's talk about this. A racist alert, I guess. Disney Plus seems to think so. I didn't think the lyrics were overtly racist compared to Peter Pan, but I don't know. Maybe
honestly, I think it's less the lyrics and more how it's sung and how the cats are drawn and animated.
The broken English and
but they're from
the front teeth.
But they're Siamese cats, guys. That's the Jacques is Scottish. Like
I know. I don't know where you draw the line on that kind of stuff. It's one of those things. It's like.
It's not
in The Simpsons. Like, is it
right?
Like, art imitates life, but then at what point is it unacceptable?
I think it's different when doing an accent and doing a caricature that's like has like a history of being associated with oppressing a minority. I think that's kind of the difference between that and Scotty.
Right. They did take this out. These characters out for the live action Disney Plus exclusive movie.
Not surprising.
They removed the song. I think it's been a while now. I think they still had cats, but they weren't Siamese cats. They were like those like naked cat things that don't have fur or whatever.
I still haven't watched the live action remake.
Naked Mole Cat.
Yeah, Naked Mole Cat. Actually, I didn't dislike the live action one. I thought it was pretty good.
How was the pacing? Like I started watching it, then I remembered how boring Lady and the Tramp was, and without the animation to keep me interested, I just couldn't make it through.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's it's equally paced, I would say, from the
Okay.
animated one. But I guess the only thing I didn't like was just some of the animations of the dogs and stuff, where they would, they would like animate their eyes or make them, and the mouths look kind of fake at times. Like I almost prefer movies when the dogs' mouths don't move but they talk, Homeward Bound style.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I kind of do too.
And so because it just never looks right.
Yeah. You can just imagine that the dogs communicate by telepathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All dogs are psychic.
But it wasn't terrible actually. It was I think more favorable in my opinion than some of the other live action ones. So David, I know you said in the past that you didn't like them redoing the Renaissance movies, but I think they should stick with more of some of the older stuff. And I think this was actually a pretty good choice, all things considered. But we don't have to talk about that anymore. All right. Real quick, I wanted to give a shout out to voice actor Bill Thompson. This dude did a lot of voices in this movie. He did the voice of Jock. He did Bull, the bull terrier. He did the policeman at the zoo. He did, I think it's DeChessie, who is making the spaghettis. He does Joe and Jim's friend. So,
Dang.
Yeah, a lot of voices for one guy.
A lot of accents.
Yeah, different things. And if you listen carefully, you can kind of hear it in all of them. But he does a very good job of coming up with these different sounds. Like the bull terrier had this like kind of speech impediment thing. Where he talked real funny and you could hear it. And he just did a really good job. He also was a voice actor who did Smee. He did the White Rabbit.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's cool.
And then he I think he's also one of the kings in Sleeping Beauty. So he does a ton of voices and was super pivotal in this time and provided a lot for them. So I'm sure people like that saved Disney quite a bit of money. Instead of having to cast 7 different voice actors, they literally had one guy come in and do 7 different characters. And so I noticed that was something they did a lot of. And I think there were some other people in this movie that did some multiple voices as well. But I just want to give Bill a shout out because he did a stellar job.
Good job, Bill. In the animation thing, I noticed in the scene where they go to the pet store and get the muzzle and she runs out. She runs across the street in front of a trolley, and this is just like really nerdy Jeffrin thing, but the trolley doesn't have any cables above it, but is connected to cables. And then it looks like they've stopped animating it before the scene was over. So it literally just stops in the background and just sits there. Like abruptly, not like it came to a stop at a station down the street. Like it just, this little thing in the background just stops. But lady's running and everything's happening so fast that you don't really notice it initially, but I thought that was funny. It was probably
right.
It was like, whatever, it's fine. I would guess they maybe extended the scene or something, but
yeah. I mean, back in that day too, most people would go see a movie in the theater once and would probably never see it again.
Right.
They weren't expecting people to frame by frame this later, like,
totally.
60 years later. Geez, 70 years? How long ago is this movie? 70-ish years? 65 years. Yeah, so, yeah.
It's a long time.
Wow.
Real quick, we should probably talk about Bella Notte, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, I agree with Jeff. Probably the most iconic scene and song from this movie. Obviously, the whole spaghetti thing is something that has its own meaning and life in pop culture moving forward. I haven't seen like an official list of how many other movies have kind of referenced this scene, but there's quite a few. Kung Fu Panda comes to mind. I think there's probably plenty more, but I don't know. What do you guys think of this song? Do you like the song? Do you like the sequence? What are your thoughts?
The song is just okay to me. Like, it's iconic, but it's not like my favorite song. But I tend to like more upbeat, kind of like bop your head songs, and this one's very much a romantic Italian ballad or whatever. I love accordion, so I do like that.
I do too.
Yeah.
I like accordions. What about you, David? Do you like this song?
It's all right. Like, I don't really. I know everyone seems to like it. I don't really like. I like the accordion bit. It's kind of cool. I mean, it's a fun, iconic scene, but I don't find the music or the song to be particularly spectacular. It's just some old Italian ballad.
Yeah. I did find it, this is separate from the song, but that in that scene, that the characters really just look like Mario and Luigi.
Yeah, they do,
30
don't
years
they?
before Mario and Luigi. So
Right.
Maybe Miyamoto based Mario and Luigi upon.
it could be. I think he likes Disney movies. I think it's
There you go. Yeah, I like the song. I think it's obviously iconic. The whole scene is good. I think the whole setup for it is pretty good too. I think it's funny that these two Italian dudes give this dog, bones, but then he brings a girl around and they're like, "What are you doing?" Like, this he's getting spaghetti tonight, the best spaghetti in town, and then they sing a romantic song for them while they eat it. And I think it would be a lot funnier thing to see this in person, where there's like two dogs in an alley eating spaghetti while these Italian dudes sing them a love ballad.
Yeah.
So I kind of chuckled just thinking about it that way, and they basically achieved making spaghetti a romantic thing to eat, even though when I eat it, I spill it all over the place. So
like a red ring around your mouth.
Yeah, nothing attractive about that.
Two comments on this scene. One, as the tramp gets there, they sort of foreshadow the conflict that does arise later when he's like, you should keep this one, or whatever, like lock down this one, and she goes, this one, and then they kind of just roll over it and keep moving forward. The other thing about this scene is, I think would have been hilarious is if there'd been patrons in the restaurant who were like, where's our food, like, because these two dudes just drop everything. They stop cooking, they stop waiting, they just go out back and they're like singing and they're making food just for the dogs. And I thought that was hilarious, and it could have been a more comedic bit if they wanted it to be, but maybe it was better to keep the focus romantic.
Yeah. And I think this is pivotal too. Like, I guess I heard that originally Walt Disney did not like the idea of this scene and didn't want to do it.
Really?
But then one of the animators really, really wanted it, and so he spent his own time basically sketching and animating it himself, and then
really cool.
showed it to Walt Disney, and then Walt Disney was like, all right, let's do it. And so originally it wasn't going to be in there, and so I don't know, I think it's also very important for the plot, because for me, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later too, I didn't really feel the romance in this movie. Felt like they spent a little bit of time together, and then all of a sudden she was like heartbroken over him, and it was just like, I didn't really feel the romance. But I feel like without this scene it would have felt even more so that way, where they like hung out one day, and then all of a sudden she's like heartbroken that he dated other people. And so it was like, this at least kind of gave it a somewhat romantic moment, so you could actually be like, all right, I can buy that they were romantically into each other at this point.
I think it helps that he rescues her, because it's sort of that, it's not the Florence Nightingale effect, because that's the nurse, but it's like a girl just falling instantly for the guy who saves her cliche. Titanic being a good example, because that takes place over 2 days.
Yeah.
So that at least sells it a little bit. It's like, okay, I can see he saved her. Now she is infatuated with him, and this is her first time out of her house, and he's showing her a good time, and it's maybe that way. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, they could have maybe had them connect a little more meaningfully. But maybe they didn't want to. Maybe it was supposed to just be like, she doesn't actually love him. She likes the idea of him and then is jealous. Maybe.
Yeah. That makes sense.
One thing I noted, and just, it's interesting, this movie is probably one of the first ones that doesn't rely on sidekick slapstick humor, like the way the mice were in Cinderella and the dwarfs were in Snow White, or even the Lost Boys in Peter Pan and all that. Like, it's very much grounded. There's just the teeniest little bit of slapstick, like maybe when the tramp fools the policeman and the nerdy guy with the book.
Right.
But beyond that, there's not a lot of that, and that was kind of a big thing of the earlier movies. Was Walt really tried to get gags, as he called them, just slapstick, visual, funny gags, or cheeky gags into the movie because I think he thought that that's what needed to carry it. So this one's got maybe more story or more substance or something that they didn't feel they needed it. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that. It's a very kind of serious movie, I would say, but but like you said, there's bits of humor in there, but it did feel like they weren't just going for what they previously relied pretty heavily on. So yeah, that's a good point. I guess I didn't really think about that, but they could have had a really silly character that they had introduced that would run throughout and do stupid things.
Jacques and Trusty could have been that because they're kind of the quote-unquote Disney sidekicks of this movie, but neither one of them is, the closest to slapstick is the little caterpillar, like
right.
Trusty sniffs. That's maybe the closest they get to it.
Yeah. One question I had that I wrote down, maybe you guys know the answer to this, I don't. Why does Tramp call Lady Pidge? Was that ever explained?
My wife and I were talking about that last night. I have absolutely no idea. I'm wondering if that was maybe the equivalent of the era of, like a dude calling a girl a chick. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That would be my guess. Just, even in Britain now, they still call girls birds. I'm wondering if that's something that was in the American vernacular and then just sort of completely, eventually got phased out. So maybe that was like just something that was said in wherever this was at the time.
Only thing I can
turn of the century. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I was just curious. That's a good theory. I guess I could have Googled it, but I figured I'd just ask you. So, all right. So at this point in the movie, for me, I had this moment of shock and awe, and it kind of upset me. I kind of realized why I don't enjoy watching this movie. Up until this point, I was having a good time. But then we got to a certain sequence within the movie where we are taken to the dog pound. And there are these dogs in, jail. They're kind of doing this. And they're howling and singing this sad song. And they do this, like, montage of sad, crying dogs.
Aww. Man.
Holy crap. What the heck?
Won't watch this movie because of that scene.
It's so bad. It's so upset. Like, I get it. Like, I guess they're trying to, like, prove a point that, like, you got to take care of dogs that are in pounds and stuff. But it's like, I feel like they could have, like, been more like, hey, I'm in jail. I've been put away. But instead, it's like a freaking Sarah McLachlan commercial.
Yeah, it really is. They go right for the heart. Yep.
Yeah, jeez. And it just, like, really hits you 1-2, and then right after that moment they kill off poor Nutsy. Remember that part where they're like, oh, there goes Nutsy, and they show like the shadow of him, and he's like being taken
goes
down
to the
hall.
keep outdoor where they euthanize the dogs.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is bumming me out, man. I love dogs. I'm a dog person, and so this kind of stuff just really bums me out.
I wonder how they even put down dogs back then too, if they want to make it even darker. Like, did they even euthanize dogs, or did they just, like, shoot him or something, or get him in the head? Yeah. Like, if you want it to be even darker. So you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
No, this whole scene sucks. Like, it's helpful to the story to show her how bad things are when you don't have a home and appreciate what you've got, and maybe the grass isn't always greener. I don't know, but good Lord, like, it's rough.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Rough. Go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, I had one more thing.
No, you're good.
I think, maybe I'm wrong, but wasn't Trusty's the name of the big dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I thought I remember reading that originally Trusty was supposed to actually die.
Correct.
And that, and that they just they thought it was just so dark that people couldn't, because the rest of the movie's tonally pretty dark. They didn't think the audience would respond well.
Yeah. I mean, they convince you he is, so.
Right. They literally fade to black and he's not moving.
Under a wagon wheel or whatever,
And Jock's like crying and stuff. That part pissed me off too.
It's rough.
Yeah, it's like so dark. I don't know, the sudden tonal shift there of it being so dark, and then like, he's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if it would really been a better movie if he died, because this movie's already so murky and dark. But I don't know if that really would have made it a better movie, but changing it last minute also doesn't really do the movie much service.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The third, what I would call real song of the movie, is the song "He's a Tramp," which is all takes place in the dog house or in the pound, and basically just talking about how Tramp he gets around a little bit, and he's pretty popular with the ladies. You guys like this song? What do you think?
I
He's
hate
a
this
Tramp.
song. I've
Jeff
never
hates
liked
it.
this song. I just don't like. Like I said, I like poppy bop songs, and this one again just it's and I also hate the way they animated Peggy Lee's dog.
Right.
She always has fur over her one eye, and then her other eye is always looking up, and she just looks high, and it drives me nuts. I don't like it. I just don't like it.
Oh,
I wonder
okay.
if it was a caricature of Peggy Lee. Like, I've seen pictures, it doesn't really look like her, but I'm sure it was meant to be sort of her as a dog, but
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that was her performance style. I don't know.
David-
What do you guys think of this song?
David, do you hate this song?
Yeah, it sucks.
Wow. All right.
What about you, Claire? Do you like this song?
I don't. No, I don't hate this song.
Okay.
I think it's kind of good. I like the dog howling in the background as kind of like the doo-wop background singers. I love the bulldog when he goes "Bumbodo Rolf." I don't know why, but I've always just like I always sing along during that part. I really like it. If it weren't for the sing-alongs having this, I probably wouldn't know it as well and probably wouldn't like it as much. It's probably a song that was the style kind of fit Peggy and the kind of music she was singing. I don't know if she was a jazz singer.
She's a jazz singer, yeah.
So it probably it fit her real well. So yeah, I agree it's not the strongest song in the movie, but I'd prefer it over the Siamese Cat song. So I guess that puts it like number 2 for me, but that's not really a hard thing to beat. Real quick though, in the live action version of this movie, I really liked what they did with this song because they're in the pound. Hi, puppy. Oh, it's a little pupper.
Yeah, for those listening to the audio-only version, a dog just popped up.
Appeared in Jeff's lap. In the live action one, they're at the pound, but the pound is right on the edge of a river. And so when Lady gets taken to the pound, like a ferry boat like kind of thing is slowly going by, and they're like playing jazz music on this boat. And so it basically is like playing the background music for them to sing the song in the pound, which I thought was super clever. And most times Disney doesn't try to explain why music is playing, but in this one they gave it like a really cool reason, and I thought that was it was super cool. So
that was cool.
Yeah.
Something we haven't really talked too much about. We've talked a little bit, but I wanted to bring up for the animation and all that they, as beautiful as this movie is and being widescreen and CinemaScope and having just gorgeous backgrounds, it's another one where they don't use the multiplane camera at all.
Yep.
Which really sucks because that opening scene where they're going through the village and especially in Bella Notte or just after Bella Notte when they're like walking through the park, the camera pans a lot and zooms a lot and the trees are just static. And I hate it. I don't understand why they wouldn't have just used it. I mean, because just for 2 or 3 shots, it would have been fine.
Right.
So I just wanted to point that out because it seems like that was sorely lacking to an animation enthusiast. It maybe makes up for it because it's in widescreen and beautiful. Maybe they hadn't adapted the multiplane for widescreen because it was probably built in 4x3. So, I mean, it could just be as simple as that they needed to build a new rig, but I don't know.
Yeah. That makes sense, actually. That could totally be why they didn't do it. Yeah, I noticed a couple reviews I watched. People were noting that it was sorely missed, sorely lacking.
For me, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's tough when they did it so well early on. And then when you don't have it, it's like, man, it added so much. But eventually, does it eventually we get it back, not in the same way, but that was worth noticing for sure. Earlier I had mentioned that there were a few things about this movie that I didn't really remember having watched it as a kid. One of them being there's a part in the movie toward the very end where Trusty and Jacques basically attempt to marry Lady.
Yes.
Propose to her.
I noted this as well. Yeah.
So that they can, she can move in with them, I guess. Because you have to be married as dogs in order to leave your owners and go to someone else's house. The whole thing was just weird, and it was like, why did that need it? It was kind of sweet because it was like they knew they were older and kind of out of her league, but they were like, I'll be a good husband to you if it means like you'll be taken care of.
Right.
But then she kind of just brushes it off and they move along. It was kind of just a strange thing.
Super weird. Yeah. I feel like that whole scene could have just been them coming to her as friends trying to support her rather than like even before the scene they're talking to each other and they're like, well, you know, I know you're older or whatever, but one of us is gonna maybe get her and we'll be okay whatever happens. It's just like, what? Didn't pick up on that at all as a kid.
Yeah.
Super weird.
Do rats typically try to attack sleeping babies?
I don't think so, but this one was like dead set on it. Like,
yeah.
that was his life
I mean,
goal.
rats, they're just rodents. They just scavenge. I don't think it would give a shit about it. Sorry, they don't think it would care about a baby.
No.
Yeah, I feel like they would just go for the pantry. Like,
yeah.
Or
yeah.
honestly, like, I don't even think they'd come to this part of town because it comes from the other side of town. Or whatever, past the fence, through the fence. I don't know. That back alley of Tony's had a ton of food just in open crates. So,
right.
Oh, well, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Also, Aunt Sarah leaving the dog out in the rain. Like, God, she's awful.
Yeah, that was. I thought about that too. I was like, that's kind of the worst.
I just like that she didn't look like that type of character either. Like when you first see her, she looks like this friendly, like old lady.
Right.
Almost looks kind of like the fairy godmother or something like that. She looks like just going to be a good guy. Yeah, and then she's just like the worst. That's great.
Awful.
All right. So it was at this point in watching the movie that I kind of came to this conclusion. I figured we'd open this up right now. Some people could view this as a negative thing, and some people could say that this is what makes the movie even better. I'll let you guys kind of tell me what you think. But my problem with this movie is that I feel like there's too much going on as far as the overarching conflict of the movie. There's the first and most obvious thing, which is there's a dog trying to cope with the fact that there's a baby that shows up and takes the spotlight away. Things change. So there's that. But then there's also a romance going on, which, like I mentioned earlier, I felt like they didn't spend enough time on. I didn't feel like it was like fully thought out. So by the time she's crying in her dog house over him, it was just like it was like, okay, I guess this is a romance thing too. I've seen people saying that this is like one of the best romance films in a long time for Disney, and I'm like, it doesn't even really feel like a romance film. And then there's this whole thing of like, is it better to be a house dog or like a wild dog? Kind of this like Aladdin, Jasmine, like I want to be in your position, and them kind of her going out and seeing what it's like to go chase chickens and stuff. And it's just like, and so I feel like there's like a lot of stuff going on. And like I said, you could totally say that makes it too much, but people could also say that's what makes it so unique, is that they're throwing so many different kind of plots and devices together into one coherent story. So I don't know, what do you guys think?
Thinking of it that way, I'm a little torn trying to kind of decide if that is what makes it good or bad. It didn't seem to it didn't bother me to the point that I called it out, that like, oh, there's too many conflicts, and without a central conflict it's just sort of like aimless, like Alice in Wonderland. Even though that one, which obviously didn't really have any sort of plot, like the conflict was her trying to get home at least, or whatever, but like, or whatever, everything drove from her trying to get home, whereas this is all over the place, like you said. So I don't know, for me it works. I think it is more slice of life in that regard, where it's like, in life there's never just one thing going on. You're trying to juggle all these different emotions and conflicts and whatever. So like in that regard, maybe that helps or works or whatever. So as a movie and story structure, maybe not as good as having some sort of bigger overarching conflict, but
I really think it needs, for me anyway, I think it needs something more to keep it moving.
yeah.
I feel like this movie goes from either being boring to too dark to too boring, and then right in the middle you kind of get this cool one like scene of happiness where Lady and the Tramp have fun together. It just comes off to me as this whole thing just feels kind of drab and depressing. I don't know. It's like, hey, look, life is mostly boring and awful, but then I guess maybe you have a good moment sometimes. I don't know. I don't know if that's the message they're going for. I guess it's kind of slice of life, like as you said, but I guess to me it didn't really. I don't know. It didn't feel that entertaining outside of it, the amazing animation and the amazing backgrounds, and that's really the main reason I would watch this film, is to see that. I don't find the music particularly interesting or anything else. Like, another thing that I think they could have, if the music had been better, that could have been a way to keep such a sort of random, sporadic movie moving along. To me, it just feels like the movie starts, a bunch of things happen, and then the movie ends.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think me personally, I would have picked maybe one, maybe two overarching conflicts and things, and spent more time with those. I felt like they did a good job setting up the whole being replaced thing by a baby, and then they kind of resolve it at the end. You know, Tramp saves the day, and then they save Tramp, and everyone's happy all of a sudden, and Jim Deere and Darlene are like super nice now and everything, and it's just like, so I didn't feel like the conflict resolved very great. The romance thing obviously worked out, but I didn't feel like they spent enough time really showing us that these characters were connecting on a personal level outside of a montage of them walking through romantic wet cement. And so so I think they could have, I think they set it up for one plot, then they threw a love story in the middle of it, and then they kind of tried to wrap it all up. And so but I don't know how you fix it in but yeah, I don't know where I'm going with it, but I'm probably nitpicking at this point, but it was just something I noticed where it was like, it felt like there was a lot going on and they had minimal time to kind of wrap it all up. I will say at one point toward the end, I did note that I felt like the movie was going on a little long. It was longer than I remembered it being. But
yeah, after the rat scene, I feel like it didn't need to be the rescue scene.
Right. They should have just, the mom and dad should have came home and found the rat, and then it, like, you're a hero, and then it could have gone over.
Exactly.
Right. And this movie's only like what, hour 18 minutes?
Yeah,
it feels so much longer though.
Right.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Last thing I noted before that, actually, I just want to mention the zoo scene with the beaver. I would be mad at myself if we didn't at least mention that that's a fun scene. I really like that scene. He's a good character. They did a good job with it.
I like that he's also basically the gopher from Winnie the Pooh.
Yes. He has a little whistly speaking voice.
That works well.
Exactly.
You do that well. I can't do that.
That was pretty good, Jeff.
Oh, thank you.
So I just want to mention that scene. I love it. There's not a lot to talk about with it, but it's a good scene. The last thing I noted, thankfully at the very end, they did not kill Trusty, obviously. And then Lady and the Tramp both have babies that are perfect breed copies of themselves based on the gender, as is the rule in most cartoons. Yep, that's how it is. So, that's the last thing I had. Did you guys have any other things of note?
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything.
Yep.
I like that it bookends with Christmas on each end. The little baby, as an infant or whatever, as a toddler, kind of looks like Michael from Peter Pan.
You're right.
That's about it.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm good. I'm ready for final thoughts whenever y'all.
All right, let's do it. Final thoughts. Who are we starting with today? David, go ahead.
Okay. All right. We read some of what I've already said. I don't really like this movie very much, and I don't have the nostalgia factor to, I think, brighten it up. To me, it's too boring. I like a few bits here and there, but I think I probably preferred the way I've seen those bits in the past, which is just watching the few select scenes that have really iconic backgrounds or animation or, cool moments. And watching this as a complete picture kind of just bores me or depresses me, one or the other. That being said, it is probably my favorite work of 2D animation in a film. I really, because of it being in CinemaScope, because it being one of the last hand inked, and I do stylistically like the art style they went for more here than in Sleeping Beauty, which is, I think, the other, probably my second favorite animation-wise. So I have to give it a big kudos for that. This is a film that is absolutely beautiful. The backgrounds are pristine. The animation is just incredible to watch. And yeah, but as a film, I think it's kind of boring. And this is, I think you mentioned earlier that this one, this is a prime one to turn into a remake because it's, not a Renaissance film. I guess my slight disagreement with that would be is that it's hard to make this story better, and the animation is the thing that keeps it going. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10.
Man.
Okay.
It's interesting. I kind of came into this with an idea in my head of what I would score it, but then, talking through it with you guys is very helpful to kind of help me shape my own opinion. As Dave said, it is one of the most beautifully animated and drawn, and just the backgrounds and the dog character animations and the personality, even to me the characters in general are really well done. Plot-wise, even without the overarching conflict or whatever central conflict, I think it works well. It's basically dog story, going back to my Toy Story connection. The life of a dog as she goes from puppy to young lady, learning how the world works, doesn't understand what a baby is, doesn't understand the streets, all that. So like seeing the character development of her in general is pretty good. It's not perfect, but there's the technical shortcomings of the animation, obviously being the lack of multiplane. Other than that, really well done. So I think I came in thinking I would give it a 9, and I think I'm actually going to give it an 8.
All right. Cool. For me, kind of wrapping up everything I've said so far, it started out a bit slow for me, I feel like, then eventually found its stride. I felt like it had some really good characters and some really good voice actors, which really played those characters well. Outside of the main two characters, I felt like the guy that did the voice for Tramp did a good job, and Lady was fine, but those characters were kind of just okay for me. Tramp obviously was very like carefree and just like, hey, whatever, it's all good, and it was fine. But then if you compare him against like a character like Thomas O'Malley from Aristocats, I feel like Thomas O'Malley has leaps and bounds more personality and is just way more of an interesting character, even though they're very similar. And so I don't know. I didn't really attach to Lady and the Tramp, but then some of the other side characters I thought were much stronger. Other than that, just not an overly interesting plot. I think that it was kind of like the plot that they came up with just wasn't super interesting to me as a kid. I didn't really relate with being replaced by a baby, which maybe, a lot of kids probably did. And so that could work. The love thing didn't really, as an older person, I didn't really feel like I got enough to really see that they were falling in love or whatever. I don't enjoy seeing sad dogs, so I'm automatically going to score it lower because that whole sequence just makes me upset, makes me sad. The art in this movie, like the other two said, is really good, really well done. Sets the scene perfectly. I don't know when this was set in America, but we can kind of guesstimate just by how good of a job they did with scene setting, indoor and outdoor. And so I think that was spot on. The songs were just okay. And I thought the soundtrack was even a little bit weaker. There are some iconic little melodies, like the one you talked about with Lady. I thought is a good part, but when I hear it, it doesn't fill me up with nostalgia like some other movies from this era do, as far as soundtrack goes. But I was back and forth on a 6 or a 7, to be honest. I ended up going with the 7, and I think I'm going to stick with that. I think not to be in the middle of you two, but just because I don't think it's quite 8 quality, but 6 seems a little harsh for it. So I think I would give it a 6.5, but we're not doing half. So I'm going to go 7. Boom.
Woo.
Nice.
All right. Well, there you go. David has compiled a list of all our scores thus far. So we will add those into there, and we will keep working our way through. And then one day we'll look back on all these scores and we'll feel bad that we were so harsh on these movies.
Yeah.
Indeed.
We do the final countdown of all the Disney movies and realize we made horrible mistakes.
Yeah, I can't wait to, like, when we're done and just sort that list and see what's, like, kind of at the top and what's at the bottom.
Right.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of this one movie I watched one time called Toy Story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I hear it's pretty good.
Well, speaking of Toy Story, it's time to wrap this up, which Toy Story is yet to been able to figure out how to wrap up because they keep making more of them. So with that, thank you for joining us for Movie Bytes. We will be back next month. David, what movie are we watching next month?
Sleeping Beauty.
Boom, boom, boom.
I'm looking forward to this one.
I am too. We'll get back to fairy tales. We haven't been in fairy tale since, I guess, Cinderella, unless you count Peter Pan, but I wouldn't. So, okay. So, yeah, definitely check it out. We'll be back. We do one episode every month. They get uploaded from time to time. It just depends on schedules and things. So I'm trying to get better at uploading faster. I've switched to podcasting hosting sites, and I think it's working much better. So you can also listen to these episodes on our YouTube. I'm going to make a YouTube page for this. I haven't made one yet, but I will. And so if you want to watch our delicious faces talk about Disney movies, you can find us. Just go on YouTube and type in Movie Bytes, and hopefully you'll find us. So, Jeff, David, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for getting up early to do this. I appreciate it.
Yes, excellent work, gentlemen. I had a good time.
Yep. Always a pleasure.
All right, we will see you next time on Movie Bytes. Peace.